I remember loving it, but...
It was great.
Because I used to watch that and then Pinky and the Brain. So.
Pinky and the Brain, and then what other ones came out of that? There was Tiny Toons, which was not really the same
that's a
still
predecessor.
Still Steven Spielberg,
yes.
yeah.
But thing about Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain, not too many cartoons have valid spin-offs.
Right,
The spin-offs in television are rare, if not good, when they actually happen as well.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and jump into today's episode of Escaping Podcast.
The best podcast in Colorado Springs when it comes to all things geek, nerdy, and everything in between.
And by everything in between, he means the minutes, the moments, the days when your senpai notices you. Today, we are talking about Japanese influence in Western culture. As always, I am your host, Daniel Rojas, joined by...
Kels for show, a.k.a. the prince of all a.k.a.s, a.k.a. his a.k.a.s over 9,000!
That's Kelsey.
Also known. Yes, that's my Vegeta voice. I just wanted another reason.
It's a whole persona, and when it happens... Sometimes it can't be stopped.
True that, and...
Felt it in my soul.
I'm glad you did, because once we get some YouTube shit popping, hopefully sooner than later, there are going to be a lot of bad impersonations brought to you by yours truly. My Trump is on point. I got a little Chris Rock, some Shannon Sharp, some Stephen A. Smith. I got that Vegeta cooking. Best believe I got a little Wolverine in me somewhere. And when he popped them claws...
It's as long as his tombstone is so far.
So, eventually it's just going to be a building you go in, and there will be different pictures of Kelsey throughout his life with different AKAs.
Exactly.
And then what we do is we put a Spotify code on there.
Yeah.
That of, what song reminds you of that Kelsey.
Exactly.
You're so complex, that's why I'm so simple.
All I got to say, sometime, bub, we got flaws. You get the claws.
And across the table from Kelsey or Wolverine or...
No. Address me as James, please, and thank you.
Jimmy over here is sitting across from...
Dynamite.
Michelle, a.k.a. No intro.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay,
I have no intro still.
You know what? It's fine. But also, you just said Michelle is like synonymous with no intro.
It is.
Yeah.
Exactly. Damn. Okay.
Like Jean Grey is Jean Grey, but also she could be famous, but she's like, nah.
So, talking about Jean Grey and Wolverine did spend time in Japan.
Yeah.
And today we're talking about the Japanese influence in Western culture.
Yes.
Yep.
So, what are some of the shows, or some of the things that you grew up with that really were the first influence that you got from that Japanese culture?
Okay. So for me, some of my earliest memories are of music and TV, cartoons in general. And one of those programs was of course Thundercats, which was not a Japanese property, but it was
Heavily influenced.
Yes, but heavily influenced because the animation took place in Japan.
Right.
But it was made to sell toys, like a lot of things in the 80s. And there's a TV series on Netflix called Toys of My Youth or Childhood. I highly recommend. I know I talked about it on a previous episode, but you should definitely check that out. But Thundercats, Voltron, Transformers.
Transformers was a huge one. And
Exactly.
obviously we're not talking about like the animes that we watched.
Exactly.
Because that's easy. And we will be doing another anime review.
We definitely will, because it's so trending right now. How could you not be?
And trying to fit that into the 2 episodes that we did previously was a mistake. So
But
for you, our listener, we want to bring it back again.
Growing up in the Korean culture, my mother is Korean, and so a lot of that influence, you get your Hello Kitty and your Puka.
Hello Kitty was everywhere.
Was Puka the frog?
No, Puka was the little girl.
Okay, I know Puka.
Yeah. That's who I remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Hello Kitty, was that just... I thought that was imported over here.
It was, yeah, but it was Japanese, Sanrio.
Yeah.
That culture. So, but in Korea, they also share that kind of same characters.
Well,
and
you have a wealth of amazing stuff.
Yeah. So that's kind of my introduction to it, and I loved it. And I remember going to New York City and buying, like, the pencils and the little pencil holders and erasers and everything you can think of they had.
Anything.
Now it's like... Hello Kitty dildos. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean,
that's the perfect dildo.
Progress.
Like, Hello Kitty.
Whoa.
I'm placid.
Pussy?
Yes, no, I'm a dick. I want to say hello to the kitty.
Moshi,
like
moshi,
it all,
pussy.
You get things like that. Sanrio is huge. Everybody knows that.
For those people that don't, what is that?
It's just the little characters from the company Sanrio.
Oh, okay.
Kind of like in Korea, lotte is or Lotte. Lotte. I don't know how Americans say it.
Are you talking about the corn? Elote?
No.
Elote?
Elote?
Oh, that
Their
delicious ass
company.
corn
And
with
they
the
have-
mayonnaise
yeah.
and
The
the
spices
spices and the
Yeah.
cilantro.
And they have their characters. So, these companies create these animated characters that we love. Yes.
Yeah, you can see them anywhere and just be like, I know that's right.
Icon like
Exactly.
Jaden Smith. That's what's up.
Yeah. For me, one of the biggest ones growing up as a kid, I don't know if you guys remember, there was a TV show, a cartoon called Big Guy and Rusty.
Big Guy and Rusty came out at the same time on Fox Kids when they had freelance Sam and Matt's freelance release.
Yes!
That time period, and they was pulling from more indie style comic books. That's also when the Godzilla cartoon was out. The Godzilla cartoon based on the American Godzilla movie, which was trash, but that cartoon was dope. And also at the same time, that animation studio was also doing the animation for the Men in Black cartoon on WB Kids.
That Men in Black, the animated series, was one of those shows that made everything you knew in the movies almost obsolete because the show was just immensely better. And there were some elements in there, too, of that Eastern culture.
And then we're going to just keep it for the time periods, moving from, the 90s to, the late 90s to the early 2000s. And then you had things like Adult Swim comes out with Toonami.
Toonami was amazing and changed everything with their late night programming.
Exactly.
It made all of those shows, the anime, the hardcore stuff, accessible to us.
And with Toonami, you also had, of course, you can't have Toonami without Cartoon Network, and they gave us the Powerpuff Girls, which was heavily influenced by the anime culture.
Easily to tell that,
Exactly.
And Powerpuff Girls was amazing.
Exactly. I still refer to women, depending on their friend group, as Powerpuff Girls because the archetypes and the dynamic between the crew is very simple. You have Blossom, the mother hen. I'm not going to say alpha, but she's the one that has to take charge.
She is the leader, for sure.
AKA the Leonardo, the Cyclops in most situations. Then you have Buttercup, my fave, which is the tough, the rude one, the Raphael, the Wolverine, and most of the times it's going to be the lesbian, the tomboy in the crew. But, do what you think, do what you want with it.
Hot take.
Exactly.
Hot take, Michelle.
And then finally out the trio, you have Bubbles. She's the naive, she's the nice, you could say dim-witted, she's the lovable one.
I would
Depending on how you
say
slice it.
innocent,
yes. Naivety and innocence
she's still
go hand in
smart,
hand.
and there are moments where Bubbles does get, pushed to that edge where she's like, all right, bitch, I'm still a Powerpuff Girl.
I think she's a little too positive compared to the
And she's definitely the Michelangelo, the Iceman type character in this art. I'm here to have a good time. I'm fun. I'm young.
Off topic, do you remember the ice cream trucks when you would get the Powerpuff Girls and they always had the little fucked up face?
Powerpuff Girls, Sonic, Ninja Turtles, Buzz Bunny, Tweety Bird.
You're expecting fucking Blossom or Buttercup, and then you get Sloth from the Goonies.
Exactly.
And it's just a mess, but it still tastes delicious.
Exactly.
So with these shows you've seen growing up, how would you say now as adults they represented that culture, knowing now more about it than you did at that point?
Yeah, I mean, for me, there were certain shows that did it justice, and I think I loved the style. The Japanese have a way of making it almost like a cinematic value. And that's what I saw in Gargoyles and X-Men. But then
X-Men Evolution for sure.
Oh yeah.
Oh, don't do that.
But then Powerpuff and everything, I felt like the drawing was more lazy compared to
for sure.
Japanese culture where it's very detailed. And I mean they even had the movement of the hair and anime to portray certain feelings. So sometimes American drawing can get a little bit lazy.
Word.
For sure.
And my counter to that point would be the fact that there's different levels and different subgenres of anime.
Yeah.
So then, you were speaking about, you have the more detailed anime like your Akira's and things like that, and Tenchi Muno's and Inuyasha's. But then you also have the opposite side, which is the chibi, more lighthearted, funny, cutesy type anime, kind of more like you were talking about earlier with Hello Kitty, and Powerpuff Girls focus on that element of the art style. Yeah. And then from that focusing to the now, we have a show called Teen Titans Go on Cartoon Network, which is one of the most popular shows. Maybe because that's like the only show they show most of the day, every day. And it plays heavy into the chibiness of that niche of anime culture, because we, for the most part, all realize that Teen Titans, the OG series, is one of the best cartoons ever. And that was influenced by Japanese culture, especially anime, from the action lines, the stylization of the characters, and how they incorporated the humor into that shit. And what's funny, I always find interesting too, is that fans now love Teen Titans for that, but back then, people hated on Teen Titans because it was so influenced by anime. They was like, oh, this is one big anime. Oh, this is trash. But now they all love that shit.
But that's the thing with all fans. Like, even Star Wars fans, Star Trek fans, they always want to, we are the unique ones. We're the ones that made this style. But then they realize, everybody influences each other.
Exactly.
So
I loved it for the purpose of it being anime influenced, and I like the story. But then some people are like, nah, fuck it. But now they're like, no, it was so great. Like, really? Now you're on the bandwagon?
Well, and with that, I kind of want to talk about that a little bit, where you have your Hello Kitty stuff, but then something we just got recently, what is it, Agresco? Agresco, and that is a cute character.
Yes.
And that's American
Is that
made,
a raccoon you guys
No. Red Panda.
Panda.
Put some respect on her name, please.
I don't know. You only had me watch one episode.
Because you wasn't feeling it. I was about to force feed you.
I had a lot of tequila that day.
You always have a lot of tequila.
So you got Agresco, and that is now more of the widely accepted American-made animes. Americanimes, if you will. And
ooh, I like that.
Yeah, right.
Whoa. We need to coin that phrase. We need to
write that down right now. You also had, when Avatar: The Last Airbender first came out, people were a bit angry that it was an American-made anime. Because they're like, you're stealing from this culture to do your own thing. But look how beautiful that show was. And obviously influenced by Japanese tradition. When Korra came along, it was already a beloved art style. And then you've got Dragon Prince, which is in that same kind of realm.
Do you fuck with Dragon Prince?
I do.
Whoa, are you current?
No, I'm a little bit behind.
Okay,
that one I'm
because
not familiar with.
I fuck with Dragon Prince. I've been trying to tell this nigga Ross to fuck with Dragon Prince.
He needs to.
They got picked up with 4 more seasons.
I know.
The thing about Dragon Prince and Avatar, we about to go on a little split conversation real quick, is the fact that I feel like it just doesn't have that whimsical heart. Because we know where it's going. Yes. And it's still a good show. Don't get me wrong. It's still fantastic. Story,
but there's an
element that's missing. It's that Mati.
Yes.
Are you saying it has ties to the Airbender? Or
No, it's from the same creators of Avatar.
However, so the same guy who voices Sokka, who was also in Dorm Life.
Yeah, he does the main voice. Who was
also on All That as a kid. Who was also on a YouTube channel, Jack and Chris. He voices the main character.
Yeah.
So if you have that Sokka feel,
he's there. And he's very Sokka-ish.
He's very
So there's a lot of overlap between Avatar and Dragon Prince. So once you know that it's from the same people, you can start to see a lot of the same elements. Even though how they structure the books and the episodes. But it's still good, but it's just like, that's the one thing that is missing, that jovialness that AIM brought to it.
Yes.
It's very bright.
And if you want to know, if you want to listen to more of Kelsey talk about Avatar or Korra, check out the episodes that they've done recently on Yo Where the Captions At. That's obviously on our network. We're going to take a break real quick and tell you about some more shit that we have coming to our network. Shit that we have served up and talked about and cultivated, especially for you.
The best shit. The Chicago bullshit of shit, baby. Dynasty's in the making, baby.
The Shitberg McCronenberg. It is a monstrosity, but we made it for you.
Oh, it'll take more than one flush to get that down, baby.
We'll be right back after this. How's it going, guys? This is Daniel.
And Kelsey Show, a.k.a. Kelsey Greer. And today we're going to give you a little introduction to a new show that's coming to our network.
Our network is growing, and we're really excited about what's happening. But instead of us telling you about the show, we figured we'd let the hosts of it bring you in on what's coming up. Guys?
All right. Hey, guys. We are 3 guys, 10 eyes. Just 3 guys. 2 of us wear glasses. Simple math.
Yeah. We just are going over simple entertainment topics, pop culture, sports, music, interviews, and stuff like that as well for the local scene.
Yeah, we're just going to try to bring up the community. If you have anything that you're starting up, your career, we'd like to have you on the show. Just hit us up. We have Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook.
Yeah, all of those at 3 guys, 10 eyes.
10 eyes.
Word. And do you want to give us your names individually, or is this one collective?
Is this
unit? Like
is this an anonymous thing, or are you all three attached like a Cerberus?
Well, we are all three attached at the hip.
It's kind of
We're kind of like
almost
Siamese,
disgusting to look
Siamese
at, I have to
twins.
say.
Them hips don't lie though.
Well, it's actually more hips than could lie.
Unfortunately, we have very small hips, so we're just literally.
Like an Instagram model.
I go by Young Pyramid. I also make music, so check me out on
What
that.
type of music you make?
I make hip hop and like alternative
You
hip
play
hop.
live instruments, or is just like?
No, it's all like
He is the
beats,
instrument.
and then I make my own lyrics and I rap.
Yo, we might have to talk, bro. We might have to talk.
I've heard.
No, we will talk.
So when can we expect to hear from you guys next?
We are posting every Tuesday. We go live right now on Facebook. That'll be going on every Sunday and probably for another 3 weeks. And that's on my Facebook, Derek Shreve. You want to go?
We have his name now. Okay, you
Yeah.
wrote that down?
Yeah.
Great.
My
Hands
social,
don't work like
my social is 666. So hit me up.
Yo.
Dude, we just lost our whole Christian following. Right?
No. On this network, I think you just
No, they-
built some more.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't believe in God while believing in the beast, baby.
Cool. And then, I'm Ultimate Dusty. I just do gardening and gaming.
word.
Yeah,
What type of gardening?
all kinds, man. We got pumpkins growing, watermelon growing,
Because I've been trying
squashes
to grow
coming
some
in.
collard greens. My garden's been fucking up lately, but then again, I haven't put too much attention to
Okay,
it.
yeah, we haven't tried no collard greens, but we got kale and lettuce and all that good stuff coming in. Just today we harvested some cucumbers and tomatoes.
Hey, yo, you grow some tomatoes, give them to me when they're green. I'm frying them some bitches up.
You
Same
can
way we
probably
with
do that
people.
with the abusive husband.
Exactly,
Yeah, it's
always.
And you?
I'm Christian. I don't rap or garden. I just work at a grocery store.
Damn, yes! You are
My
the
man.
fucking man, the everyday
Essential.
person.
Yeah.
Yes.
Too essential sometimes, but that's all right.
Too central.
So we're looking forward to having you guys on the network, and I know that you listening out there right now, I can't tell you how exciting this is, how fucking wet you should be getting.
Don't do that.
I did.
I'm dripping. myself.
I'm honestly a little scared.
You got a mop around
Should
here?
be.
Yeah, no.
A healthy dose of fear will always keep you alive. Batman taught me
It's
that.
kind of just one of the rules of the network. You come in here, we all get naked, we record it, and it's good to be a little afraid. So
Saves you on AC costs too.
the fact that we are in a basement and it's cooler does not help the fact that I'm still sweating. We have them coming onto the network starting next month. Be ready because it's gonna get crazy. Guys, thanks for being here, and let's get back to the show.
Exactly.
Sick.
All right, we're back, and going with what we were just talking about, there's another show that has come out, the new She-Ra, and that is also very much in this. It's like a descendant because we got Avatar and Legend of Korra from the influences from the Japanese culture. Then from there we got Dragon Prince, and then as if it was influenced by Dragon Prince and Legend of Korra and Avatar, we got She-Ra.
Actually, that's why I will backpedal on that. It was, to me, because I just finished it last night, it has more influence from the Sailor Moon magical girl genre of anime, because a lot of transformations
agree with that,
is
yeah.
very female oriented in the fact like they want to make this for young women, and also they want to play into the fact like, yo, you don't need a man. Like they have that angle too, because like, spoiler alert, Adora, who turns into She-Ra, and Catra, they were best friends for a long time, and they ended up being a couple in the show, and some people felt a way about that. Similar to the way they felt something about Korra and Asami and the Legend of Korra. Me being me, I have no problem with anybody loving who they want to love.
Yeah.
As long as
Yeah.
that shit is healthy, it doesn't, you're not out there killing people, sacrificing babies, any wild shit like
Yeah.
that. But at the end of the day, I just feel like when you want to do that, something like that, and you know the audience you're doing it for, you should do it with respect and care and dedication and make it a great story arc. Like, just don't do it for the sake of doing it. Like, do it with a purpose. And I just feel like the just like with Korra, that could have been handled way better. She-Ra could have been handled better. It was because towards the end you kind of saw it coming, but at the same time these are cartoons aimed for kids, so normally you don't go in thinking like these two characters are gonna be together.
Yeah.
But if that was their idea from Jump Street, they could have fleshed it out way better and made it more compelling story.
More fluid.
Exactly, because it's like, all right, cool. Now it's like, oh, she could just be her best friend, and you just love your best friend. Because that happens all the time in anime. Yeah. But then when they're like, yo, I love her, like, oh, you do? Like, oh, now everything starts to make sense.
And for a young adult crowd, they think, friendships could be bound by just that and not more of an intimate level.
I guess I have to make a counterpoint to that.
Yeah.
Because I think it is important to show kids love who you're going to love, and it's okay. The LGBTQ movement can exist in that, and I think it should exist in that because there are kids who have those feelings, who know who they are, and like even as a kid, you're figuring out who you are, but to see that representation is important because it doesn't just make it, okay, well, they're just friends, when you can have kid shows where there are love interests that are heteronormal.
Yeah.
Exactly, and with that show also, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, Michelle, but in the show they already have, like Bo, he has dads, and then there's other characters that have moms, and like you handle those well, like it was no big focus, there's no blah, it is what it is, but I was just saying like, do it well, like just don't, like, cause life's not easy, and when you have something like that is still, like, we're still at the cusp of understanding like how to introduce kids to like same-sexness as far as the masses go. Like, because we all represent, we all love all that shit, we cool, but we also have to understand different people aren't going to be that accepting.
Yeah.
And I see where you're coming from, Daniel, and I'm not trying to like knock you or anything. That's not all I want to do, but I see what you're coming from 1,000%. It's just like, hopefully as things evolve forward, they could take that in consideration and being like, all right, from this point on, we're going to the show knowing this, so we're going to plant the eggs here. Just like in any other heterosexual show, they're going to end up hooking up together because it's just apparent.
And that's the thing. It's like, make it more fluid. Make it is just part of the story. Don't make it the main plot of the story. Yes. Because when I think you do that and you make something the main plot, you're pandering to a certain audience, and then you lose another part.
I don't think it's pandering. I think with that, the same way you can have alfalfa loving Darla right out the gate. Yeah. And the story is the Little Rascals, but there's still that love interest for children. Having same-sex or even non-binary folks with romance, I don't think it's pandering. I think it's simply representation.
No, it is, but it depends on how you present it.
Exactly.
And with
a lot of
in
a lot of comic films and a lot of films in general lately, you start to see that where they want to make a certain audience happy with their work. So they're like, we're going to incorporate this and then make it very obvious and blunt. Whereas you can still introduce it, make it natural, more organic, without it being like,
here you go.
What if but what if that is the creator's design?
All right, then.
To have
then that's fine.
Because I will say with the creators of the new She-Ra, that was their plan.
And that's one of the things too, because I went down a deep rabbit hole with the She-Ra. It's like, it's one of those things, but at the same time with the She-Ra fan base, a lot of people that created the show was knocking the old audience for not having quote-unquote views, even though that was never the case. Because the old She-Ra was written by women. Even the He-Man show had mostly women working on that. So it's like one of those things that the Japanese culture, too, once again, has always been, I don't know, streets ahead, because they always have gender fluid characters. They always had issues with not issues, but they always touched upon sexuality and ambiguity between like the genders and roles like that. That's why if you watch anime like we all do, there's certain characters like, I don't know what you is, but cool, but like, but it doesn't take away from the series, but it's just like, just a thought, because it's a human thought. And that's why when you have certain characters, certain animes being adapted for the American audiences, they switch up the role completely. Like, for example, Sailor Neptune and Sailor Uranus in the original Sailor Moon series were lovers, and this came out in the 80s, but when it came to America, the American adaptation of they made them cousins.
Yeah,
or just friends.
It was their way of taking away from it to make it, in their minds, more acceptable. When in the original Japanese one, they're like, no, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And that's just what it is.
It's nothing new. Like, you go back in any civilization, you have same-sex couples, and now how they view that it's here and there, but the fact that it existed is the fact that it existed. And then, like, for example, like with Naruto and other animes, or Soul Eater in particular, they'll take a female character that was a female that was clearly a woman in the anime, but when they bring it over to America and give it to us, they change it to being a boy just because they didn't want to deal with the backlash, quote unquote, of two characters in a cartoon being the same.
It was easier for them to write.
It's easier for them to be like, no, we're going to switch this up. Which doesn't make sense when you're visually looking at them like, no, that's obviously it is. But now you tell me not because of America's ideology towards sexuality.
So another point to go with that before I get to the next point that we have here, Pokemon. Let's look at Pokemon, the original one. Jesse and James were constantly shattering gender roles.
Yes.
They were constantly just doing what they were doing.
They were very Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny.
Right, and like he'd be wearing a dress, she'd be wearing a tuxedo, and it's the fact that it is so normal. It is so just that's what they do. You know, was amazing because you don't see that. You don't see a lot of that, and it was just again their shtick.
Yes,
Meowth was their kid. They both had this gender fluid idea about everything, and it was amazing. Now, with Pokemon, that did originate in Japan.
Of course.
Yeah. But then we get an Americanized version, and we see, even from that, even from us getting Dragon Ball, even from the influence we got in the early 90s, and even in the 80s, when we got Astro Boy, when, it started kind of flooding in that there was all these other animations, Transformers was created and was groundbreaking.
Yeah.
And still had that influence. Now, my question is the importance of this influence. In what ways would you say it's changed our media, and in what ways has it bettered our media?
I think the detail. It improved our detail in animation. You know, if you look back into American cartoons and animated films or anything like that, we didn't have the amount of detail and even though anime is known for their like exaggerated features, the big breasts, the big heads, or their hair that's like
right
crazy,
ever flowing.
Yes, or their fashion, but it brought something to our cartoon where it's like it doesn't just have to be like a basic one-dimension drawing that's just running around.
Of course.
Yeah. And I have to say, off topic, but anime cartoons are the only ones that I can watch and still get hungry, because have you watched the food that they cook in the anime?
It's not fair.
Yes.
Because I'm never going to have any pho or ramen that is that.
Exactly.
And I'm so glad you brought it up, because I didn't realize that till you said it, but they will take more time animating and designing the food than they do the rest of the fucking anime. Because when they
the
eat,
flame that's cooking has a face and it's smiling and it's happy to cook your
steam
food.
coming off all the shrimps.
But then a main character can be just slightly far enough that their face is just 2 dots for an eyes in the mouth.
Saliva.
Yeah, wait a second.
It's just those little things that we didn't have in our cartoon.
Right.
That
The attention to detail.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And story arc as well. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, of course.
So in depth, and character buildup was amazing.
Instead of quick arcs, you now get stories that can be drawn out and fleshed out to their full purpose.
Serialized. Exactly. Kind of like how Marvel did in comic books when it went from like, it was a time and point when comic books were like one comic book, that was a story. Then Marvel started bringing like, no, to be continued. And it carried on. Then you had crossovers with the Avengers. Oh, they made the Fantastic Four. Now they made the X-Men. Now they all meet Galactus in a huge company crossover. And that's one of the things too, like with anime, it was created as a counterculture to like the atomic age after Japan, or was it here the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. That's when the creator of anime got inspired, but I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I know his name, but I know his name. But he gave us Astro Boy, and he was also a fan of Walt Disney, so he took the Walt Disney approach, and he made his characters with big eyes. He gave him very American features and things of that nature. And we got Astro Boy, and from
kind
there,
of like that Betty Boop feel.
exactly. And from there,
absolutely.
that was the foundation, and everything else rose from the ashes of like a nuclear wasteland of a country, or a part of a country. I'm not gonna do that, but for every action, there's a counter action. And from that tragedy of that time period, we have a culture that we are influenced from right now. So, yeah.
Well, and I'll even say one of the more recent shows that is one of my absolute favorites, Steven Universe,
Got that written down
takes
too.
a decent amount from that, but it still creates its own story, and it's not overtly anime or Japanese based or influenced, but you see it. You hear it, and you're like, this is definitely long-form story.
Exactly. Even when it comes to the transformation sequences,
Yes.
so like the dancing of the fusions, to a la the Dragon Ball Z fusion dance, the things of like gender fluidity, not taking things to heart, and just the overall aesthetics about a warrior's tale and just high-level concepts. Because a lot of time in American cartoons, they're very simple. Especially when it comes to kids, they're very cut and dry, even with adult cartoons. But the Japanese cartoons, the animes, have always pushed for a broader level of thinking, and that's why I respect Belden more.
I think branching away from anime, another thing that we were so heavily influenced from was Japanese horror films. You get The Grudge, The Ring, but on top of that, you have to see our style went from like blood and gore horror films to more of a supernatural feel. You get the classic ghost with the long hair that's covering the face, their movement, which is kind of jerky. And the storylines, they're more in depth and more about vengeance of a ghost, and you get those feels from the Japanese culture or Asian culture in general with their horror films that they introduced to America, and a lot of directors are taking inspiration from that. I mean, you get the Insidious, you get the Conjuring series. So, yeah, I think not just in anime, but in horror films, even action films, you see our fighting style. John Wick took from a lot of the fighting styles with...
John Wick took from the... I can't believe that's been John Woo.
Yeah.
The John Woo film. Kung Fu was created by his style because he had the Replacement Killers. He did Mission Impossible 2.
Yep.
And Face Off, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and his style of cinematography was definitely unique, and Hollywood's always looking for that next new thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes that does come from the Asian community. Mm-hmm. And that's very... I'm glad you brought it up, too, because like even with that, like The Ring and when all those movies are popping... We got The Ring because they adapted it from the Japanese version because it was hit there. We try to make it a hit here. We did to a degree, and then you get the other movies that try to follow suit. So then it also births a new subgenre of films in American movies. Mm-hmm. Kind of like in the late 80s, early 90s, we had like the Poltergeist films and things like that, the Amityville horrors. But now we could come back right now and have a Japanese spin on that. Yeah. Like you said, with The Ring came out, you had the creepy girl, the jerk.
It was more of a psychological instead of a jump scare.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just like there was a movie where like Oculus was another one.
Yeah.
The one with the painting, and then you had the one with Kristen Bell. Oh shit! And Christina Milian.
Oh, Pulse.
Pulse, yes.
Yeah.
And it was based off a Japanese film as well. Yeah. Kind of in the lanes of White Noise with Michael Keaton.
Exactly.
Exactly, where they playing off the angle of the dead being a different transmission or frequency, and you hear that shit from technology.
How they communicate with us. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's definitely a genre, not necessarily a genre, but it's a concept that plays heavily in Japanese culture with as far as it comes to like anime and TV.
Yeah.
Because they're always out there thinking a little different than us in America.
Yeah, because it's a big culture of death. It is, death is a huge culture out there. In Asian communities, even Hispanic communities, where it's like, how do we communicate with them? How do they communicate with us? And to portray that in films, it's deeper now because we have that influence.
Well, and you got to look at a couple other genres. The Kaiju, which we are going to get to in one of these episodes in the series, but the influence there gave us Pacific Rim.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And then when you take the mechs and all of that, there's it's going to be my suggestion at the end of the show, but a comic book series called Kaiju Max, which is a prison drama for kaiju. So you hit like a Wentworth kind of vibe where there's really messed up stuff happening and these deep storylines, but it's drawn in a way where these,
and it's happening to monsters.
Exactly. And you've got the police who use their giant mechs. You've got, all these things. And then with the movies.
Which, the monsters and the aliens and everything from the Eastern culture for
so
our next
many
episode.
Movies.
It's
And
Amazing.
then even more of the adaptations, Seven Samurai. Magnificent Seven. Reboot of Magnificent Seven.
Yeah.
They just, to quote Kelsey, we want to be Japan so bad. But with, I guess, going just slightly back to the cartoons that we've seen based off this stuff, there are some like Kappa Mikey, where it's an American kid who's in an anime high school. And then you've got My Life as a Teenage Robot, which is
Nickelodeon.
Yeah, it's not outrightly anime, but you do have Monsters of the Week in the style of
Power Rangers.
Yes.
Super Sentai.
And then we've got Power Rangers.
And that's gonna be a whole podcast one day.
Man.
Because there's so much I could go into that right now, but I don't know. And if you don't know what Power Ranger is, you an alien.
And of course, we're going to touch on this later in a later episode, but also just the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yes, and there's another program, cartoon that came out. It's part of the Gen X. That was like the ABC Family geared Cartoon Network.
Are you talking about what I'm thinking?
Well, not what you're talking about, because we talk about, but there was a show called Witch. It was an anagram, and Witch is actually based on an Italian comic book / graphic novel about a bunch of young ladies that have magical abilities, and it also took from the Powerpuff Girl influence of the Sailor Moon influence of the Magical Girl. That's why I fuck with it. And it had the transformation. They had elemental base powers. They were caught between both worlds. Because they lived in a normal world, but their powers derived from a magical realm, very Narnia-ish. Yes, and that's a part of my inspiration for my self-created pet project with my brain called The Warriors of Zulao. I'm not going to say anything more about it, but Zuzu.
Okay.
Bazuzu. Like, it's a whole thing. And these bitches are magical.
Right.
Magnificent.
I imagine. But then you've also got, shows like Super Robot Monkey Team Alpha Force Go.
And I fucked with that series too. Like, that was a good little series for what it was.
But I think it's kind of indicative about the influence it's had. About how even shows like Looney Tunes got a futuristic kind of show that was garbage.
Oh, Looney Tunes Unleashed?
Lunatics Unleashed.
Lunatics Unleashed. That was my
bad
shit.
Show.
I love that show. They want to be Spider-Man Unlimited, Batman Beyond. They want to be Black Lightning. No, don't do that. That shit was cool. They didn't like them cook because each one of the Looney Tunes, if you didn't know about this, it was on Kids WB with Static Shock and X-Men Evolution. Each Looney Tune character had a specific power set because I think Wile E. Coyote had electricity abilities. Of course, the Roadrunner was fast. Motherfucking Taz had a whirlwind ability. Anyway, that shit was popping. Don't do that. And Daffy Duck had fire. Yo, don't do that. I love that show, man.
It was what I'm saying is it was indicative about the change we saw in our culture, and I'd say from mid to early '90s to now, we're starting to get to a level of storytelling, and I guess being a little more loose with all of it. You know?
Loosey goosey. Yeah.
Yeah, and the influence does go both ways sometimes. Look at One Punch Man, and how in that you do see some Western.
I
animation
still need to watch
style.
it, but I've seen clips. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you get some Western animation style in there every now
Season
and then.
two.
Where it's a little bit more. Their bodies do like a long stretch, and it looks like some graffiti art, and oh man, fantastic.
Yeah.
Learning from each culture and being able to take and trade and say, well, we came up with this, we came up with this, but you know what? Put your peanut butter in my chocolate, and let's see what we get.
Yeah.
A Reese's Cup. Speaking about long reaching, there was that Fantastic Four cartoon that came out a couple years ago. That was basically a Fantastic Four anime. The show itself was decent. The animation was cool, but I didn't think they had a lot of faith in it because it didn't last too long. And if you listen to me and thinking to yourself,
It's the
the
running
fuck is he
thing
talking
with
about it? Like,
Fantastic Four.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
It had potential. They had Namor in the episode. Of course, they had Doom. Like, the story was there.
How hard is it to get it right at least once?
They get it right in places. This is like, overall, they just don't know what to do.
It's, to me, and this is totally off topic of the anime, but they all need to be back in the sandbox where they came from.
Yes.
Because we've seen, and I feel like Kelsey's going to disagree with me here, but Amazing Spider-Man was not good.
No, I
Amazing
agree with
Spider-Man
that.
2 was worse.
I can agree with that. But my question to you would be, what has been the best Fantastic Four incarnation outside of the comic books?
Okay, if we're adding animated
None.
series.
Yeah.
I'm all
including-
none.
Yeah,
including.
no. If that's
Including.
included, then
Including.
it would be the one you're talking about from like mid 2000s.
The animes with the thing had like the pan.
Yeah, no, it was
and he had the
fantastic.
4 spray painted on them.
Johnny
Like-
had that
Yeah,
almost
because
spiky,
they took
super
from.
spiky
It felt like
hair.
they took from.
But that's
the
what you have to
movies.
resort to because the films were so bad.
Exactly. It felt like they took from the
not
movies,
wrong.
but also they took from the Ultimate comic books and tried to make it young. And what's more young and popping than anime?
Yeah, no, and there was a whole thing planned. It's kind of like how the Wolverine and the X-Men took a page from that book as well, and that was on Nickelodeon, and they were trying to. It had a very, I don't want to say edgy style because
It wasn't edgy.
but it was its own
Stylized,
thing.
yeah.
It was definitely stylized. It was definitely over the top.
And I like that more than I thought it would. I'm like, no, I want to see Wolverine lead the X-Men, but the story itself, that shit
Yeah.
was dope. And how they was about to get into like the Age of Apocalypse, just like when they ended X-Men Evolution on that cliffhanger when they was about to go all Dark Phoenix, they was setting that shit up. But like I said, that's a whole nother podcast. But that Fantastic Four, that shit was, it had potential. But the thing about Fantastic Four, people keep wanting to make it what it's not. It's supposed to be campy, like Shazam.
Well,
People didn't realize Shazam's supposed to be goofy, silly,
I enjoyed the movie, except
yeah, I
for two
thought it was
things.
a great
Except for two things, and
And-
I'll go back to this every
okay.
time. No one never told his siblings what the 7 deadly sins were called, and they suddenly knew the name. Bad writing, or bad editing. Two, actually 3 things. 2, I get that it was a very sad moment when his mom's like, "I don't want you anymore," but his
Because
family.
we forget that sometimes mamas don't want kids, just like
Yeah.
daddies.
But then his family's like, we're family, and I'm like, okay, Vin Diesel, I
Yeah.
get it. You all get your own car. It's gonna get wild off the chain. But then the third and final thing was, stop using gray CGI monsters. If we can pull off movies
Yes.
like Pacific Rim, if we can have developed characters like hopefully we're gonna get from Cheetah and this next Wonder Woman,
Hopefully.
then you can take characters from the lore
Yeah.
and stop making them gray poop CGI monsters.
And that was my biggest things with that. If you have the 7 deadly sins, give each one of them a specific color and and then a quote unquote ability at least. And
Well,
That's
One
what
I
we talked
couldn't-
about in mythology film, though. They
Yes.
get stuck with this idea, and that's
It
what
has
they're
to be
glued
one
to.
way.
Yeah,
The only one I could point out was Gluttony.
yeah,
That was it, because he was Fat Boy.
yeah.
Exactly. So that's my thing too. Like, Fantastic Four is supposed to be family. You could try to make it. Nobody's gonna like that. It still be good, but it's not gonna be what we want. Just make it a family film. Family movies still could get dark at places, but they're adventurers. It needs to be Indiana Jones meets the Goonies meets the Incredibles.
Well, and the last thing I'll say before we get to, because we're coming to the end of the episode, the talks are now that Human Torch will be the first one to show up
Yeah.
in this next Spider-Man movie. To
Quote, unquote.
establish the friendship between him and Peter, and then be like,
That's
oh,
what-
I'm on this team. You know,
Or at least something like, yo,
this could be a whole tangent. There's so much we could say about it, and when we have, for probably almost every episode of this podcast, we get somewhere to Fantastic Four and where we like it. And if that's not the case, then anytime Kelsey and I are hanging out, sometimes over wings, sometimes just sitting down, we always do
Only
a
because
fan
Michelle
cast.
never gets invited.
yeah.
Okay, Michelle.
And also, I would tell you about my Kevin Smith Black Fantastic Four movie where the thing is Ice Cube. Reed Richards is played by Denzel
You're
Washington.
telling them right now.
Kerry Washington is Mrs. Fantastic. Michael B. Jordan is still Johnny Storm, and Idris Elba is Dr. Doom. And that's what Kevin Smith has pitched years ago, like 4 years back.
So
But anyway,
we're getting to the end of the show here. I guess my final question to you guys is, one, what is your favorite influence that you've seen from Japanese culture? And 2, what would you like to see more developed?
I guess I could say for right now, being me, it would be fashion. Because back in the day, before all these different colored hairs were popping, if you had your hair a different color, you would call ghetto, uncivilized, ratchet. Because a lot of black females in our community had red wigs, yellow wigs, purple. They did a lot of things very colorful because we're
That was me all through high school.
we're a peacock-like people. We did things that people didn't feel so great about. You had Gwen Stefani come in and wear a Harajuku line of clothing and makeup because she went to that district in Japan and loved their culture. You also had the manga eyeliner from, I believe it was Revron. One of those lines, Maybelline, one of them was like, manga, make your eyes pop. Then you had artists like Nicki Minaj, Katy Perry, Lady Gaga start ushering in that type of hairstyling and color into their performances, into the visuals, and it became more susceptible to modern culture because the pop stars are doing it. The kids were being allowed to be a little more free with it. Anime was rising, so now we here where you can have any color you want to have, and it's okay. Fast forward to 2000, 2004, when me and Michelle was in high school. Daniel, I want to assume when he was in high school, like 8. That wasn't even the norm yet either.
Right.
But now, that shit's all over the place. So mostly I want to speak from a fashion angle. Then you have people like Lupe Fiasco, Kanye, Pharrell. Then you also have like Michael B. Jordan right now that's ushering in the anime aesthetic into clothing more prominently. And I've been telling people I've been wanting to dress like anime character because back when Trunks came out, I wanted a Trunks jacket. I couldn't buy it. Yeah. Next thing you know, B2K out there dressing like them all day. But now I got one because Hot Topic, shout out to them, no sponsorship. I got me a motherfucking Attack on Titan jacket because I just like the style.
So it's the fashion.
It's just fashion. Oh yeah.
So that kind of answers both questions there. It's what you loved and what you want to see develop.
And it's only going to go more. It's only going to grow further into the future with it, especially with masks. You could go back to Michael Jackson. I think when he was looking like an Asian lady, he was wearing a mask. And right now, Kakaske Sensei, if you fuck with Mortal Kombat or anything else Asian, samurai, ninja related, you always wore a mask. But if you wore a mask, you was an enemy.
So I suppose your hope is that we do get to Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
No. I hope we get to Neo Negro Tokyo.
I think for me, like fashion, I greatly appreciate it, but we see that in the K-pop culture too in Korea. But I would have to say the food scene. Yeah. You get the food scene and more introduction to Asian food culture.
You're right.
There's so much that I want to taste.
Whether it's Japanese, Chinese, Vietnamese, or Korean, we take such huge pride in our food, and that's what represents our culture. That I love it in our anime films, and then the fighting style.
Yes, no, I have to agree with you 100%, but can you elaborate a little bit more on the fighting style? What do you want to see develop from that?
It's almost like a choreographed fighting. Even if it's deadly and vicious,
and fast.
It's almost fluid, like a dance that you're watching. And I remember my mom and I were joking around, and I don't know if she was joking, but we were watching some movie where they were flying, pretty much jumping around, but looked like they were flying. She's like, "Oh, but they used to do that." No, I don't think they did, Ma. I don't think they did.
I need to learn that jitsu.
Yeah. But it's a very different fighting style than, you see your American...
Right. I mean, well...
Bar fights, I guess?
Yeah, bar fights unless you're John Wick, in which case you are Keanu Reeves, and you can do that.
Yeah.
For me, I guess I'd have to say my favorite thing about it is definitely the art style in movies and in shows. Because it's like we said before, certain things get a little bit more detail than others, and when the others don't, it's so you can focus on that one. And like the food, or like this scene is important because of the way that it's structured and the cinematography. But I feel like they've been doing that cinematography a little longer than we have.
Yes.
And yes, we've had some great classic movies. But now there's another way of looking at it. There's another way of doing it.
It's how I imagine if Kelsey were in a fight, that's how I imagine him fighting.
It's a dance.
Yes.
And it's every step he already had planned in his head. Bruce Wayne taught him to think 12 steps ahead.
I know. It'd be a lot of me ripping flesh from men's necks and napes and kicking ankles.
He'd be ripping their nips. You heard it here first.
I will. I would bite the shit out any place I could get my mouth on. I'm too small.
It's very light on his feet.
But
that's why Wolverine should never be 6'2". I'm not getting to that right now.
But so the thing I love the most is definitely the way that the cinematography, the aspect,
the angles, the hair,
there's so much emotion in scenes that don't even have any motion in them, and that's important for storytelling. What I'd like to see developed is a little bit more of that in movies and in shows going forward.
Yeah.
I don't think everything needs to be a movie, but damn it, I'll take a show.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing we've learned from their culture. You can take something beautiful, and instead of cramming it in to make what someone else wants, you flesh it out.
Yeah.
You take the time to develop it. You take the time for your characters to make sense and for the people to connect to them, whether that's through hate, empathy, love, something.
Even just their minor facial expressions represent so much throughout the film.
Absolutely. So
Exactly.
we're here at the end. Obviously, another week, another naked episode of all of us sitting here.
Naked.
No,
What is
Daniel.
that breeze?
Sorry, I've been blowing that way the whole time.
That's called a Southern Miss.
Okay, so obviously, thank you guys for doing this again another week. Where can the people find you, and what's one thing you would plug based off of this conversation?
People, get out there. Don't be intimidated by subtitles or dubbed films. Get out there and watch it. And you can find me on Instagram as M. Lee Gideon or Michelle Gideon on Facebook.
All right, Kelsey.
There's a couple things I'm going to recommend real quick. First and foremost, I'm going to recommend arguably the greatest American created animated series of all time. I'm going to count both of them into this recommendation. That's going to be Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra. Avatar is on Netflix right now. Korra will be on there August 14th. And if you pair them together, I really can't say it's not the greatest animated American program of all time, series-wise. And the fact that it is based on Japanese culture and the anime foundation just makes it even more unique in itself over here. And anybody that watches both American cartoons, of course, and anime will tell you anime is where it's at when it comes to just animation, story arc, and character development as is, especially when you're an adult and you're outside, your adolescence, and you just want to see bright things and punchy.
Right.
You care about these characters, you cry for these characters, you laugh with these characters, you regret with these characters. And second of all, would not be the movie, but the actual comic book of Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Oh,
because
fantastic.
it is a straight up manga, point blank, period.
The comic book is wonderful, and you do get the hints here and there of,
It's
what's
literally
going on.
drawn like a manga.
Yeah.
And it's
except for the, it does read left to right.
Exactly. And I had to explain that
did
to a
difference,
mom because her daughter wanted a My Hero Academia
And you're like,
manga.
that goes right to left.
And she's like, is this how you really? Like, yes, ma'am. Because if you don't read this right, they be like, no, go back to the front, you Westerner. Flip that son back around, the son bitch around, and start like this. So those are my two to get out here. And always, you can find me, Kels for Show, Snapchat, Instagram, Kelsey DeAndre Greer, my full Govey on Facebook, and always Mondays. Recording this shit somewhere. The weekend, I'm somewhere downtown. Weekday, I'm somewhere downtown. And if I'm not, then you don't need to be around.
Wow. Okay, for me, my recommendation, as I said earlier, is Kaiju Max. If you're a fan of Wentworth or any kind of prison drama, but you also love the outlandish and extravagant nature of giant robots and kaiju.
Is there prison butt stuff in there too?
Yes. There's also the Mecha Godzilla character who has now found enlightenment in the cloud, and we all go to the cloud one day, and then you get the Godzilla.
already there.
Yeah.
Come on, we're already there.
And then you get the Godzilla type character who comes in and is just a total Chad asshole.
Yeah.
And he's there and
Yeah, chattel.
oh yeah, he's like, oh hey, Mecha me, shit, I thought that was you. Yeah, you gonna do something? Fucking do something.
Angel? Because I see that shit every day I'm in the shop. I'm like, Kaiju Max, all right.
Yeah, man, Kaiju Max is fantastic. It's drawn in such a way that you don't expect to take it seriously. But then you read it and you're like, this is a hard-hitting story.
Yeah.
This is in-depth character development. This Scarred has a drug problem. And he keeps going into his mech and wrecking shit.
Story shit so he can fuck some shit up.
And in one story, you get a kaiju who's working with these cops who are giant mecha people, but she's one of the good ones, even though her brother is in prison. He's in the Kaiju Max. And it's this whole... there's corruption. There is brutal scenes.
Corruption with a K?
Yeah, there's a family mafia kind of shit. It's amazing. But as always, you can find me on Facebook, Daniel Rojas, Instagram, Blue Morpho, one word where the O's are zeros. And you can find us on Facebook and Instagram under Escaping Podcast. If you or anyone else you know would like to have your music featured on Escaping Podcast, go ahead and email us at escaping.podcast@gmail.com. You can catch us downtown some days. You can catch us in your dreams every day. And if you turn around right now, you can see me ducking to the corner. Nope, not that corner.
Word. And I just want to shout out two other series real quick, talking about comic books that were influenced by anime culture. An older one would be Battle Chasers, written and drawn by Mad Joe. It was one of those series that came out in the late 90s, early 2000s, and you could just tell by the illustration that he was influenced heavily by anime, and that's why me and a lot of people in my high school loved that comic book because it looked like the shit we was watching at the time, like Dragon Ball Z and Tenchi Muyo and things like that was on Toonami at the time. And his art style hasn't been emulated a lot as much as I thought it would be, especially seeing how impactful the anime culture has been in comic books, but you still could see it here and there. So I definitely recommend Battle Chasers for anybody that loves comic books and anime and manga. And then the next one I'm recommend is No One Left Behind. No One Left to Fight. The graphic novel is out now. It's fantastic. It's basically like a modernization or analogy to the Dragon Ball series.
It's a love letter to it.
Exactly, without being just outright like, no, this is like, no. We know what it is. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. It's fun, and it takes what we know from that series and put a little different twist to give you something that you can relate to and enjoy for what it is. And Volume 2 should hopefully be coming out in 2021 because it leaves you on a cliffhanger, and I can't wait to see how that shit ties up.
And I actually, when I was at the comic book store, I talked to Aubrey Sitterson, the creator of the book. Because he called, he was saying, we want this in your store, can you pass it along to the owner? And we ended up talking on the phone for about 20 minutes about our love of Dragon Ball, our love of growing up with these types of shows.
Exactly.
And so when I first heard that, I was more than excited to start reading it.
Exactly.
So that's the end of our show, folks. Thank you so much for listening. We love you. And today we're going to leave you with Jettison, another track from Prefab Soul. You can find him on Facebook, SoundCloud, Prefab Soul. And I can't get you out of my heart. Dear God, I'm throbbing just thinking about you. We love you. And there can only be one jump bucket.
And remember, guys, whenever you feel like the world is being a real slave and you're tired of the mind manipulation, you can always make like a Teen Titan and go and become an escapee. Stay uncanny, y'all.